Hi everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back tonight, and we have finished the Day of Honor saga. It's done. The final book in the Day of Honor saga here was Star Trek Deep Space Nine's Honor Bound, a young adult novel by Diana G. Gallagher. So they kind of, really the first four books were like the core of this thing, and then it seems like they kind of tacked on maybe the extra two. But they were good. They were good, definitely. But a young adult novel, when you're getting into it, of course, you're looking at something totally, completely different than what you would used to be reading. You know, the tone is going to be lighter. It's going to be an easier read. It's going to be shorter. But let's just jump right into it, because it was actually a pretty good read, and we have some illustrations to look at, so we will take advantage of that. Now, when the hunting instinct takes over Commander Worf's young son Alexander, Worf gives Alexander's teacher his Klingon word of honor that his son's behavior will change. But Alexander must pay a heavy price as he faces disgrace and dishonor for challenging his bullying classmates with character instead of force. Alright, doesn't give away too much, but basically, this is pretty short, so we will take the time together to just go on through it and just kind of slowly suss it out here and see exactly what we've had. So, the author gives a special thanks here at the beginning to L.A. Graff for invaluable information about the Day of Honor. L.A. Graff, of course, wrote Armageddon Sky, which was the second book in the saga here. The book does start out with giving you a nice timeline. Well, kind of a random timeline, but just kind of covers the major events in the in Starfleet, I guess I could say. But like, it just got some weird things in here that don't involve the book at all. Like, it does tell you that in 2353, Catherine Janeway enters Starfleet Academy. So, but it all kind of ends here with 2372 being the year when the Klingon Empire's attempted invasion of Cardassia Prime results in the dissolution of the Khitomer Peace Treaty between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. So if you're familiar with that part of DS9, that's when this story takes place. So there's a little bit of animosity between Starfleet and the Empire at this point in the book. So the book starts out with Alexander living on Earth with his grandparents, Sergei and Helena Roshenko, and he's been having some trouble on Earth. He's basically, as he's kind of coming of age, he's having more and more trouble controlling this Klingon rage that builds up inside of him. So the Roshenkos have asked that Worf come and talk to Alexander, and that's the start of this book. So they're there waiting now at the shuttlecraft landing bay for Worf to arrive. Alexander's worried. He thinks that Worf is just going to come. He's going to yell at him. He's going to be upset with him. You know, they haven't had the greatest relationship, not the best father-son relationship. So, here we have our first illustration. So here you see Sergei and Helena Roshenko and Worf and Alexander in the terminal bay. And Alexander is upset. He kind of thinks the whole world's against him. And right there in the terminal bay, on their way to leave, they run into a little bit of hostility. Oh, look at that. Focus. And what happens is there's someone calls Sergei a Klingon lover. And then that makes Alexander mad. He goes to shove him. A little bit of scuffle there, and Worf can kind of see that there's a little bit of turmoil going on there with Alexander. So the whole thing breaks out into a little bit of a fight where Alexander is chasing after this kid, and he's got this intense Klingon rage. Luckily, Worf was able to get a hold of him and stop him from ripping his throat out or whatever he was going to do, and then he's placed under arrest. So Alexander is arrested. They're able to work it out with the local constables, kind of saying, this guy started it. He was being prejudiced against Klingons, and they're able to take Alexander home then. So they take a kind of a quiet ride home, and the whole way home, Alexander's like, "Oh, everybody hates me. This sucks." It's like kind of your typical like young adult stuff, And I remember reading so many of these type of books when I was this age too, so it was pretty easy to kind of dive back into this and just go along with the story. But young Alexander, pent up with rage, as soon as they get out of the car at the Roshenko's house, what does he do? He jumps and he tears up Helena Roshenko's prized rose bushes. Look at him in his rage. The illustrations in this book, I have to say, are pretty good. So it's one fun thing about reading a young adult novel is that you get something extra, you get some fun little illustrations there. So anyway, he runs off into the forest, ashamed of his actions, but eventually Worf is able to find him, speak with him, and explain what's going on. And that basically that Worf screwed up. He did not explain a fully, to Alexander how to go through this, how to deal with this Klingon rage that's coming out at this point in his life, And to compound issues, everything at school for Alexander is going terribly because of this animosity now towards the Klingons. So he's feeling this from his former friends, from other people. Apparently there have even been attacks where some people have lost their lives, and one of the classmates of Alexander's was someone that lost like an uncle or something in one of these attacks. So it just kind of adds to the animosity, and he's feeling it from a lot of different angles. So Worf's out there talking with him, trying to teach him, you have to learn, this is going to be something that's with you, but you have to learn to overcome it. So he hears something in the bush nearby, and his hunter instinct kind of goes crazy. And all of a sudden he's rushing, chasing down a rabbit to kill it. So like this Klingon like blood instinct is like a real physical thing that they have to overcome. And Worf kind of teaches them to do that here. So Alexander chases down the rabbit and catches it and is getting ready to kill it, but then Worf like kind of talks him back from the edge, like, are you hungry? Why are you doing that? So they do end up setting the nice rabbit free in the end. So there you go, Worf, Alexander, and the saved little rabbit, who did not get turned into a dinner for the Klingons that night. So basically at this point, Worf knows that he's got to teach Alexander a way to control his issues. And what they're going to do is do the Makbara. So the Makbara is like this Klingon like ritual, movement, slow, steady. And if you've seen TNG, I'm sure you've seen, I think they had a couple Makbara featured where Worf is teaching some Makbara. One thing I liked about this young adult novel here at the end is it didn't really have a lot of Klingon stuff in it, which was good. So even though it was kind of meant for a younger audience, they really did well in kind of diving into the whole Day of Honor. And she really did well with it, I would say. So Worf and Alexander then begin their practice in the Makbara. There they are. Makbara there in the Roshenko's backyard. So with that, Alexander is able to learn a little bit of control. So for a couple of days, he's able to kind of ignore the normal bullying that would bother him, and is able to get past that. However, a few days into the week there, so they kind of do a little bit of a time jump forward here. He's in school, and some bullies come by. The bully, in particular, Bernard Umbaya, comes by and says, "Out of the way, lumphead," and shoves Alexander aside. He drops his pad on the ground where it's stepped on by a Tellarite. Anyway, typical bullying nonsense. And but what he doesn't do is attack or strike back. So the Makbara is working for Alexander, and he's able to keep his cool against the bullies. After the bullies do that and leave, a nice young girl picks up his pad and gives it to him, and in return he snarls at her. And she kind of freaks out and runs away. But later on, we'll learn more about that snarl and what that really meant for Alexander. Because Alexander really liked her. He wasn't mad at her, but that's just how Klingons act, So he's doing a good job of sticking to his word. And his word to his father was that he was not going to fight back against these people. Oh, I didn't drop the biggest bomb that this book even dropped yet. When Alexander and Worf are talking in the woods, Worf reveals that when he was younger on Earth, living with the Rashenkos, playing soccer, and going for a play, he shoved his teammate so hard to get the ball that he killed him. I know, right? That's pretty deep for this young adult novel, and it makes me wonder if that's something that was referenced in another book in in Worf's history, because man, that's something that would really shape and affect your life. So if it's just like a candid beta canon detail that's dropped in this young adult novel, then that's pretty strange, I would say, but pretty good nonetheless. It's fairly interesting. So again, you've got Alexander staying calm against the bullies, trying to do the right thing. Now he's going up to the library, and he's just trying to study. He's got a physics paper due. He wants to get his stuff done. And here come the dang on bullies again. And they're giving him some heck, and he's ignoring them. He's trying to do the right thing. And what do these bullies do? He thinks that they left. They went behind the freaking bookshelf. And look at that. They pushed the dang thing over on Alexander. What? Can you believe that? Now, a few days earlier, Alexander got mad at a computer and kicked a table and was reprimanded by the librarian for doing so. So he's kind of on thin ice with the librarian. The boys, of course, take off. Alexander jumps out of the way of the shelf, but his sleeve is caught. So he's kind of stuck there. The librarian comes up, sees what happened, and accuses him of doing it. Now, Alexander doesn't want to rat out the three boys, because in his thinking, if he rats them out, they're going to come back for retaliation, and that retaliation is going to cause him then to... Did I change my calendar? Okay. His retaliation is going to cause him to break his oath to his dad. So he doesn't want to do that, so because he goes... Sorry, I didn't change my day calendar today. That was yesterday's. Anyway, he doesn't want to do that, so he doesn't rat them out, and he takes the fall for the massive leather-bound shelf of books that got kind of wrecked and destroyed, and he's looking to be in detention for the whole week now. Ooh, detention! Now, he expects that Worf is going to, rip his head off and tear him a new one for this, but Worf does not. Worf knows. He has been working with Alexander these few days, so he knows that even though Alexander won't tell him the truth, that there's more to the story than just Alexander freaking out and knocking down a bookshelf. So, he has to go and pick him up from the school, of course. But like I said, he knows that something's going on. There's a kind of an interesting little scene here that I talked about earlier, where Alexander's telling Worf about what happened with that girl earlier when he snarled at her, and then Worf's giving him a knowing look. He's got to get something out of his locker, and then he goes and talks to the girl, as illustrated here. Alexander's like, "What are you doing, Dad? Don't talk to her." But anyway, what he does is he goes and explains to the girl that young Klingon boys, basically when they like a girl, that's how they're going to react. So, and she seemed to take very kindly to that, which Alexander liked. So, maybe a little bit of a crush there going on. So now they've got... Yeah, here we go. These bullies, I tell you, they come around, but... So Alexander is trying to leave his detention. So detention's over, he's on his way home, he's going through the soccer field. He just wants to get home. He doesn't want any trouble, but who does he run into? The dang on bullies again. Alright, so Alexander, even though he's confronted by these three bullies, and they basically come right at him, they want to fight, all he's doing is defensive stuff. He's doing everything he can just to avoid them, move them away so he can not break his oath to his dad, So he does all that, but it's just not enough, and eventually they're able to kind of overcome him, and since he's not really fighting back against them, They're able to get in a few good licks on him before the I think the teacher and maybe the librarian or something come in and break up the whole fight. So they're able to break up the fight, but of course the three boys accuse Alexander of starting the whole thing, and since he didn't own up to the whole bookshelf deal, that's what they think. They think that he did it, and they're pretty happy, the bullies, because they think they've got him expelled and out of there. Getting dry. And the teachers are fairly upset because they think that Alexander kind of went against his word. Now, of course, this is when everything comes together. Man, for a young adult novel, this is pretty fun to talk about. So everything comes together here in this part where they call in the parents, they call in Worf, and they're going to have a big conference to sort this whole thing out. And this is when Worf comes in and kind of lays the whole thing out. Because he knows. He knows what's going on. So, I guess the one thing that's kind of cool about this is the boys had no idea that Alexander's father was a Starfleet officer. So when Worf comes in his full uniform, with his sash on, they're all like, "Whoa!" And that's kind of cool too. They weren't expecting that at all. I guess to even see a Klingon in a Starfleet uniform. So here is Worf, and there you've got the young bullies, Bernard, Kim, and we'll figure out the other one soon. But anyway, so the young bullies come in, and the first thing that Worf does is sit down with Alexander alone and get the real story, which he does. And he gets the real story as to why Alexander wouldn't rat him out, which really makes him happy. He's pleased to see that he's really taken this seriously, and he's being quite honorably. So Worf comes up with a fantastic solution to both. One of the problems that they're having here is that, and they kind of come to grips with this, is that it's a matter of prejudice. That these humans are prejudiced against Alexander because of what's going on right now with the Klingon Empire. So they have this prejudice, and there's kind of a good scene when they realize that, because on Earth they think that they've kind of done away with all of that at this point. They're not prejudiced against each other anymore. But then there's this kind of interesting little scene where they realize that they are prejudiced against these Klingons now. And that's when I think the humans in the story that were initially against that kind of start turning around and agree to go ahead with Worf's plan. And then Worf's plan is to hold the... so this is, again, this is the Day of Honor saga. And of course in this book, the Day of Honor is fast approaching. So they are going to educate the school and the community there by holding this kind of Day of Honor ceremony where they can do the ritual. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before they do that, they like I said, they sit down with the parents. They have that nice discussion about prejudice. And this is Worf and the parents doing that. So that's when they kind of all agree to do this Klingon. And what it is like a high school presentation. It's like you're down in the auditorium of the high school, and you're setting up for the Day of Honor presentation there at your school. So that's what you've got going on here. And now what you can do on the Day of Honor, the Bath Dash, is the Suv Bath. Now the Suv Bath is a ritual combat where you can, typically done in 3-on-3 fashion, where you can challenge your opponent, and then the winner will be granted whatever request he desires. Oh, we're at 20 minutes now for this young adult novel. This is actually pretty good. But anyway, so they have the Day of Honor ceremony, and Alexander challenges the three bullies to the Zuvbath to restore his honor, because he's been accused of lying, and he has not lied. So they have this interesting little part now. So this is a fun little book. So they start out with basically a little presentation. They're presenting to the high school here what is the Day of Honor. So Worf and Alexander come out in their Klingon attire, and they have these teachers who are standing in, holding the torches and holding the the noisemakers that they shake these things that rattle. And they come out, and Worf is speaking in Klingon, and then Alexander is translating in English, and they're speaking about what the Day of Honor is and how it came about. And if you want to know how that came about, you can watch the video for Book 4, because that was the best one in the saga, and that's how it came about, with Kirk and Core and all that. Very good, very good. But we're not going to get into that now. So anyway, they explain what the Day of Honor is, what the ceremony is, and then they explain the Suvbath and Alexander's challenge. And the whole time he's been like virtually fighting with Worf, with this bat'leth. But now they put the bat'leths up, and Alexander has challenged the bullies to a gymnastics competition. Because this is a young adult novel, and they can't be cutting each other up here in the end. So Alexander is actually a fantastic gymnast, and he bests these 3 boys in the rings, the pommel horse, and I think the bar, and shows off some incredible gymnastic skill, does some fantastic moves, and in the process of doing so, makes friends with all 3 of these bullies, and kind of shows them that they're wrong in their ways and wrong in their thinking. So, yeah, and that's how it is. That's how it ends. It's actually really fun, and I mean, if you haven't went back and read one of these young adult novels in a while, maybe you want to do it, because I was surprised that it was a fun little treat to get into. Worf's enthusiasm in the end was great. He was so excited, and to see Alexander doing all these great gymnastic moves and stuff, he was holding up his bat'leth. So very, very well done, and I guess a nice way to wrap up this wonderful saga here. So again, this is the wrapping up of the Day of Honor saga. 6 books that we've read here in the month of honor. Ended up being 1,096 pages, and I got 3 more days in this month to jump into something else. So I think I'm going to finish up the month of honor with something incredibly Klingon. I don't know what that is yet, but it's over there somewhere, and I'm going to find it. So I'll look for that tomorrow, and then hopefully dive into something with some real deep Klingon lore to close out January before we jump into which I think will be a very Romulan February, is what we're thinking. So that'll be fun. We are going to stop this one here because we've just spent 23 minutes nearly talking about the young adult. Why can't I say that? The young adult book, Day of Honor, Honor Bound. There's also so many other books called Honor Bound. Did you know that? Comic books, Star Trek books, but this is Day of Honor, Honor Bound, and it was good. As always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Glory to you and your house. Qapla'! And we'll see you next time.